Marcus wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished his double shift at the construction site. His back ached, his hands were covered in dirt, and all he wanted was to go home to his 7-year-old son, Tommy. The pay from this job barely covered their rent for the small 2-bedroom apartment they shared. But it was honest work, and Marcus took pride in providing for his boy the best way he could. As he walked through the quiet neighborhood streets at nearly midnight, Marcus noticed something unusual. A young woman, probably in her early 20s, sat on a bus stop bench with nothing but a small backpack. She was shivering in the cold night air, wearing only a thin sweater and jeans. Her long dark hair covered most of her face, but Marcus could see she looked lost and scared. Marcus had always been the type of person who couldn't walk past someone in need. His late wife, Sarah, had often joked that he would bring home every stray animal in the neighborhood if she let him. Even though Sarah had been gone for 3 years now, Marcus still carried that same compassionate heart. He approached the young woman carefully, not wanting to frighten her. "Excuse me, miss. Are you okay?" he asked gently. The girl looked up, and Marcus saw tears in her bright green eyes. She appeared to be well educated and came from a good family, but something had clearly gone wrong. "I'm fine," she said quickly, but her voice shook. "I'm just waiting for the next bus." Marcus glanced at the bus schedule posted on the stop. The last bus had already come and gone hours ago. "The buses stopped running at 10 tonight," Marcus said softly. "Where are you trying to go?" The young woman's shoulders sagged in defeat. She had been sitting there for over 2 hours, hoping against hope that another bus would come. "I don't really have anywhere to go," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I had a fight with my family. I thought I could figure something out, but I don't have much money with me." She showed him a crumpled $20 bill, which was all she had managed to grab before leaving. Marcus felt his heart break for this young woman. He thought about Tommy sleeping safely in his bed at home, and he couldn't imagine any young person being alone on the streets at night. Despite his own financial struggles, Marcus knew he couldn't just walk away. "Listen, I know this might sound strange coming from a complete stranger, but I have a couch in my living room. You're welcome to stay the night if you need somewhere safe to sleep," Marcus offered. "I have a young son, but he's a heavy sleeper. You'd have privacy, and I could make you some soup or something warm to eat." The young woman, who had introduced herself only as Emma, looked at Marcus with surprise. In her world, she was used to people wanting something from her, always having hidden motives. But there was something genuine in this man's tired eyes, something that told her he was offering help simply because it was the right thing to do. "Why would you help someone you don't even know?" Emma asked, still cautious but desperate for warmth and safety. Marcus smiled, the same gentle smile he gave Tommy when his son had nightmares. "Because everyone deserves kindness, especially when they're going through a rough time," Marcus replied. "I'm not asking for anything in return, I just know what it's like to feel alone, and I wouldn't want my own kid to be stuck on the streets if something ever happened." Emma studied Marcus for a long moment. She had run away from her family's estate after a terrible argument with her father about her future and his business practices. She had always lived a life of luxury, but she had never experienced genuine human kindness from a stranger who expected nothing in return. "Okay," Emma said finally. "Thank you. I promise I won't be any trouble, and I'll leave first thing in the morning." Marcus nodded and gestured for her to follow him. They walked the remaining 4 blocks to his apartment building in comfortable silence. The apartment was small but clean and welcoming. Family photos lined the walls, showing Marcus and Tommy at various ages, along with pictures of a beautiful woman who Emma assumed was Tommy's mother. The furniture was old but well maintained, and everything had a warm, lived-in feeling that Emma's mansion had never possessed. Marcus quietly prepared the couch with clean sheets and a warm blanket. He heated up some leftover chicken soup and made Emma a sandwich, refusing her offer to help. "You're the guest," he insisted with a smile. As Emma ate the simple but delicious meal, she realized it tasted better than any expensive dish she had ever been served by professional chefs. "This is really good," Emma said, and she meant it. Marcus beamed with pride. "My wife taught me how to make it. She said the secret ingredient was making it with love for the people you care about." There was a sadness in his voice, but also warmth when he spoke of his late wife. As Marcus showed Emma where the bathroom was and gave her a spare toothbrush, Emma found herself wondering about this man's story. His clothes were worn, his hands showed the evidence of hard physical labor, and the apartment was clearly that of someone living paycheck to paycheck. Yet he had opened his home to her without hesitation. "Thank you," Emma said as Marcus prepared to head to his own room. "You don't know how much this means to me." Marcus paused in the doorway and turned back to her. "We all need help sometimes," he said simply. "The important thing is that we help each other when we can." With that, he disappeared into his bedroom, leaving Emma alone with her thoughts and a warm feeling in her chest that had nothing to do with the soup. As she settled onto the comfortable couch, Emma stared at the ceiling and thought about her life. For the first time in years, she felt safe not because of money or security systems, but because of simple human decency. She had no idea that this one night would change both her life and Marcus's forever. Emma woke up to the smell of bacon and eggs cooking in the small kitchen. For a moment, she forgot where she was, expecting to see her silk curtains and hear the usual morning chaos of servants preparing breakfast in the mansion's formal dining room. Instead, she found herself on a comfortable couch covered by a handmade quilt, listening to the cheerful chatter of a young boy. "Dad, who's the lady on our couch?" Tommy asked in a loud whisper that wasn't really a whisper at all. Emma smiled despite herself, remembering how she used to whisper the same way when she was his age, before her father hired tutors to teach her proper etiquette. "She's a friend who needed a place to stay last night," Marcus replied quietly, though Emma could hear every word from the kitchen. "Her name is Emma, and I want you to be polite and kind to her, okay?" "Is she staying forever like Mom did?" Tommy asked, and Emma heard the hope in his young voice. Her heart clenched as she heard Marcus's gentle response. "No, buddy, she's just staying until she figures out where she needs to go next. But we can be good hosts while she's here, right?" Marcus's voice was patient and loving, the kind of voice Emma remembered her own father using before business and money became more important than family time. Emma got up and folded the blanket neatly, trying to make herself presentable. She had slept in her clothes and her hair was a mess, but she felt more rested than she had in months. The stress and pressure of her real life seemed far away in this small, warm apartment. "Good morning," Emma said as she entered the kitchen. Tommy looked up at her with wide, curious eyes. He was a miniature version of his father, with the same kind brown eyes and gentle smile. His school backpack was already packed and ready by the door. "Good morning, Emma," Tommy said politely, just as his father had taught him. "Dad made extra breakfast for you. He makes the best pancakes in the whole world, but we usually only have them on Sundays because they're special." Marcus blushed slightly and placed a plate of pancakes, eggs, and bacon in front of Emma. "Tommy's a little enthusiastic about breakfast," he said with a laugh. "I hope you're hungry." Emma stared at the plate in amazement. The food was simple but prepared with obvious care, and the portion was generous despite the fact that she could tell this family didn't have money to waste. "This looks incredible," she said, and she meant it. "You didn't have to go to all this trouble." "It's no trouble at all," Marcus replied, pouring her a cup of coffee in a mismatched mug. "Besides, Tommy was excited to have a guest. We don't get visitors very often." As they ate breakfast together, Emma found herself drawn into their easy conversation. Tommy told her about school, his best friend Jake, and his dream of becoming a veterinarian so he could help sick animals. Marcus listened to his son with genuine interest, asking questions and encouraging Tommy's dreams, even though Emma could tell that veterinary school would be far beyond their financial means. "What do you do for work, Emma?" Tommy asked innocently. Emma froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. She couldn't exactly explain that she was the heir to a multi-billion-dollar empire, trained from birth to take over companies and make corporate decisions. I work with my family's business," Emma said carefully, "but I'm taking a break from it right now." This was technically true, though break was probably not the right word for running away after a screaming match with her father. "That's cool," Tommy said, completely satisfied with her vague answer. "Dad works construction. He builds really important stuff like hospitals and schools. He says his work helps people have safe places to go. Marcus smiled proudly at his son's description of his job. Emma could see that despite their financial struggles, Marcus had raised Tommy to find dignity and purpose in honest work. This was a foreign concept to Emma, whose father had always taught her that the only work worth doing was the kind that generated massive profits. After Tommy left for school with a hug for his father and a shy wave for Emma, the apartment felt quiet and peaceful. Marcus began clearing the breakfast dishes and Emma jumped up to help despite his protests. "You're a guest," Marcus said, trying to take the plates from her hands. "You don't need to clean up." "I want to help," Emma insisted, and she realized she meant it. At home, she had never been allowed in the kitchen. The staff took care of everything while she focused on her studies and business training. "Besides, you've been so kind to me. It's the least I can do." As they washed dishes side by side in the small kitchen, Emma found herself asking about Marcus's life. She learned that he had met his wife Sarah in college, where they had both studied education with dreams of becoming teachers. Those dreams had changed when Sarah got pregnant with Tommy, and they had both dropped out to work and support their growing family. "Do you ever regret not finishing college?" Emma asked gently. Marcus considered the question seriously as he dried a plate. "Sometimes I wonder what might have been," he admitted. "But I can't regret the choices that gave me Tommy and the years I had with Sarah. Besides, there's honor in any work that lets you provide for your family and help your community." Emma thought about her own expensive education, her multiple degrees, and her father's constant pressure to join the family business. She had never considered that there might be different ways to find purpose and satisfaction in life. "What about you?" Marcus asked. "What's your family business like?" Emma hesitated, unsure how to explain her world of boardrooms, stock options, and corporate mergers to someone whose idea of a successful day was earning enough money to put food on the table and keep a roof over his son's head. "It's complicated," Emma said finally. "My father has very specific ideas about what my life should look like, and I'm not sure I agree with him anymore." This was the most honest she had been about her situation since leaving home. Marcus nodded, understandingly. "Family can be tough sometimes, but whatever's going on, I hope you two can work it out. Life's too short to stay angry at the people we love." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. In less than 24 hours, this kind stranger had shown her more genuine care and wisdom than her father had in years. She was beginning to understand that there were different kinds of wealth in the world, and Marcus and Tommy possessed the kind that couldn't be measured in dollars. 3 days had passed since Emma first arrived at Marcus's apartment, and what was supposed to be one night had stretched into something neither of them had expected. Emma had called her father twice, but both conversations had ended in shouting matches about her future and her responsibilities to the family business. Each time she had hung up feeling more determined to stay away from that world of cold business deals and manipulative relationships. Marcus had never asked Emma to leave, and she had never offered. Instead, they had fallen into a comfortable routine that felt surprisingly natural. Emma would wake up early and help Tommy get ready for school, something that delighted the 7-year-old who had never had a woman's attention since his mother died. Marcus would leave for work, and Emma would spend her days exploring the neighborhood, doing small household tasks, and preparing simple dinners for when Marcus returned home exhausted from his construction job. For the first time in her life, Emma felt useful in a real, tangible way. At home, teams of people managed every aspect of her daily existence. Here she was learning to cook, clean, and take care of the small but important details that made a house feel like a home. When Marcus came home to find dinner ready and Tommy's homework already started, the look of grateful surprise on his face made Emma feel more accomplished than any business deal ever had. But Emma's presence was starting to create complications she hadn't anticipated. That morning, Marcus had received a notice from his landlord about a rent increase that would take effect next month. He tried to hide his worry from Emma and Tommy, but she had seen him sitting at the kitchen table late at night, calculator in hand, trying to figure out how to make the numbers work. "The rent's going up again," Marcus had confided in Emma when Tommy was brushing his teeth before bed. "I'm trying to figure out if I can pick up more weekend shifts, but that means less time with Tommy." The exhaustion in his voice broke Emma's Heart. Emma knew she could solve Marcus's financial problems with a single phone call. Her weekly allowance was more than Marcus made in a month, but she also knew that Marcus's pride would never allow him to accept charity, especially from someone he thought was just another person struggling to make ends meet. Maybe I could help with some of the expenses, Emma suggested carefully. I could contribute something for groceries and utilities. Marcus immediately shook his head. Absolutely not, he said firmly. You're our guest, and you're going through your own difficult time. I'm not going to take money from you. Emma could see that the conversation was closed, but her mind was already working on other solutions. The next morning, after Marcus left for work and Tommy for school, Emma made a decision that would change everything. She called her personal assistant Jennifer for the first time since she had run away. Emma. Jennifer's voice was filled with relief. Thank God you're okay. Your father has been worried sick. Where are you? I'm safe, Emma said, avoiding the location question. But I need you to do something for me, and I need you to keep it completely confidential. Don't tell my father or anyone else in the family. Emma explained that she needed Jennifer to research Marcus Williams, but not for the reasons Jennifer might expect. She wanted to find a way to help Marcus without him knowing it was coming from her. As the heir to one of the largest construction companies in the country, Emma had connections that Marcus couldn't even imagine. Within hours, Jennifer called back with information that made Emma's heart race with excitement. Marcus had applied for a supervisor position with Henderson Construction Company several weeks ago, but he hadn't heard back. Henderson Construction was actually a subsidiary of one of the companies in Emma's father's business empire, though it operated independently enough that Emma could influence hiring decisions without raising suspicions. Emma spent the afternoon making careful phone calls, using her influence to ensure that Marcus's application received special attention. She made sure that his experience and work ethic would speak for themselves, but she also made certain that the right people knew about his application. By the end of the day, she had arranged for Marcus to receive a call about an interview. When Marcus came home that evening, he was more excited than Emma had ever seen him. You're not going to believe this, he told Emma and Tommy as they sat down to the spaghetti dinner Emma had prepared. Henderson Construction called today. They want to interview me for a supervisor position next week. Tommy cheered and hugged his father. Does that mean more money, Dad? Can we get a bigger apartment? Marcus laughed and ruffled his son's hair. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, buddy. I have to get the job first, but yes, it would mean more money and better benefits. Marcus turned to Emma with a grateful smile. I feel like having you here has been good luck for us. Emma felt a warm glow in her chest, but also a pang of guilt. Marcus thought his good fortune was just luck, but she had orchestrated the entire thing. She told herself that she was just giving Marcus an opportunity to show his worth, not buying him a job he didn't deserve. As the days passed leading up to Marcus's interview, Emma found herself more invested in his success than she had ever been in any of her father's business ventures. She helped him practice interview questions, though she had to be careful not to reveal too much about corporate hiring practices. She even convinced him to let her buy him a new shirt for the interview, claiming that she owed him for his hospitality. The night before the interview, Marcus was nervous and excited. I keep thinking this might be too good to be true, he confided in Emma as they sat on the small balcony after Tommy had gone to bed. Jobs like this don't usually just fall into people's laps. Emma felt another stab of guilt, but she pushed it aside. Sometimes good things happen to good people, she said. And she meant it. You work harder than anyone I know, and you're a wonderful father. You deserve this opportunity. Marcus smiled and reached over to squeeze Emma's hand. It was the first time he had touched her beyond polite handshakes, and Emma felt an unexpected flutter in her stomach. Thank you, he said quietly, for everything. I don't know what Tommy and I would have done without you this week. Emma looked at Marcus's kind, tired face in the dim light from the apartment windows, and she realized with sudden clarity that she was falling in love with this man. Not because he needed her or wanted something from her, but because he had shown her what real love looked like, through his devotion to his son and his simple, genuine kindness. But even as her heart filled with warmth, Emma's mind was racing, with the complications this realization would bring. How could she tell Marcus who she really was? How could she explain that she wasn't just Emma, a young woman estranged from her family, but Emma Richardson, heir to a business empire worth billions of dollars? And how could she admit that his job interview was the result of her manipulation, even if it was well-intentioned? Marcus got the job at Henderson Construction, and the celebration that night was one of the happiest moments Emma had ever experienced. Tommy was so excited that he insisted they have ice cream for dinner, and Marcus was too happy to argue. As Emma watched father and son laugh together over bowls of chocolate chip ice cream, she felt a deep contentment that all her years of luxury had never provided. The new position came with a significant salary increase and health benefits that would make a real difference in their lives. Marcus would start as a site supervisor the following Monday, which meant better hours and less physical strain on his body. For the first time since his wife died, Marcus felt like he could provide Tommy with real security, and maybe even save for his son's college education. "I owe you so much gratitude," Marcus told Emma that night after Tommy had gone to bed. "Having you here has changed everything for us. It's like you brought good luck with you." Emma smiled, but inside she felt the growing weight of her deception. Over the next 2 weeks, Emma watched Marcus flourish in his new role. He would come home energized instead of exhausted, full of stories about the projects he was managing and the respect he was earning from his crew. Tommy was happier too, delighted to have his father home earlier in the evenings and in a better mood. But Emma's secret was becoming harder to keep. Her phone rang constantly with calls from her father, her assistant, and various business associates, trying to locate her. She had started leaving her phone in silent mode, but she knew she couldn't avoid her responsibilities forever. Her father's business empire didn't run itself, and there were decisions that required her input. The crisis came on a Thursday evening when Emma was helping Tommy with his homework, while Marcus prepared dinner. Her phone rang with a call from Jennifer, her assistant, and something in the urgent tone made Emma answer despite her usual policy. "Emma, you need to know something," Jennifer said without preamble. "Your father hired a private investigator to find you. He's traced your location to that neighborhood. I think he's planning to come get you himself." Emma's blood ran cold. The thought of her father's black limousines pulling up outside Marcus's modest apartment building filled her with panic. Not just because she wasn't ready to face her father, but because she couldn't bear the thought of Marcus and Tommy being exposed to that world. "How much time do I have?" Emma asked, moving to the balcony where Marcus and Tommy couldn't hear her conversation. "Maybe a day, possibly 2, Jennifer replied. "Emma, your father is furious, but he's also worried about you. Maybe it's time to come home and work things out." After ending the call, Emma sat on the balcony trying to figure out what to do. She could run again, disappear to another city before her father found her. But the thought of leaving Marcus and Tommy made her feel physically ill. Over the past few weeks, she had become part of their small family in ways that felt more real than any relationship she had ever had. She could stay and face her father, but that would mean revealing her true identity to Marcus. How could she explain that she was one of the wealthiest young women in the country? How could she admit that his job opportunity had come through her manipulation? Would Marcus feel betrayed that she had lied to him? Or would he think she saw him as a charity case? That night, Emma lay awake on the couch, staring at the ceiling and listening to the quiet sounds of the apartment. She could hear Marcus's gentle snoring from his bedroom and the soft breathing of Tommy in the room next door. This little family had become her world, and the thought of losing it was unbearable. The next morning brought the decision out of her hands. Emma was walking back from the grocery store with ingredients for Tommy's favorite dinner when she saw them. 3 black SUVs parked outside Marcus's apartment building, and her father's security team stationed at the entrance. Her heart pounded as she recognized the tall, imposing figure of her father, standing beside the lead vehicle, dressed in his usual expensive suit and looking completely out of place in this modest neighborhood. Emma's first instinct was to run, but then she thought about Marcus coming home from work to find strangers at his building, asking questions about her. She thought about Tommy being frightened by the intimidating security team. She had brought this chaos into their peaceful lives, and she owed them better than abandoning them to face the consequences alone. Taking a deep breath, Emma walked directly toward the building. Her father spotted her immediately, and she saw relief flood his face before it was quickly replaced by anger and concern. "Emma," he said, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "Do you have any idea what you've put us through? Disappearing without a word, not answering your phone, making us worry that something terrible had happened to you." "I'm fine, Dad," Emma said quietly, aware that neighbors were starting to peek out their windows at the unusual commotion. "But we can't do this here. These people don't deserve to be dragged into our family drama." At that moment, Marcus appeared in the building's entrance. He had come home early from work, probably hoping to surprise Emma and Tommy with the good news that his first week as supervisor had gone even better than expected. Instead, he found himself face to face with a scene that made no sense to him. Marcus looked from Emma to her father, taking in the expensive cars, the security team, and the obvious family resemblance between Emma and the distinguished older man in the tailored suit. His expression slowly changed from confusion to understanding, and Emma saw the exact moment when he realized that nothing about her was what it seemed. "Emma," Marcus said quietly, and there was a world of hurt in that single word. "Who are you?" Before Emma could answer, her father stepped forward with the commanding presence that had built a business empire. "I'm Richard Richardson," he said, extending his hand to Marcus with the automatic politeness of a man used to being recognized. "Emma's father, and I believe I owe you a debt of gratitude for taking care of my daughter." Emma watched Marcus's face as he processed the name. Richardson was not an unknown name in their city. Richardson Industries owned dozens of companies, including major construction firms, real estate developments, and manufacturing operations. Marcus shook her father's hand automatically, but his eyes stayed on Emma. "Emma Richardson," Marcus said, slowly, as if testing the words. "You're Emma Richardson, the heir to Richardson Industries." It wasn't a question, and Emma could see him putting together all the pieces he had missed. Her expensive clothes, even though they were simple, her educated way of speaking, her knowledge about business and construction that had seemed unusual for someone her age. "Yes," Emma said simply, meeting his eyes even though it felt like her heart was breaking. "I'm sorry, Marcus. I'm so sorry I lied to you." The look in Marcus's eyes was worse than anger. It was disappointment and hurt, mixed with the terrible understanding that the woman he had begun to love, the woman who had become part of his family, had been pretending to be someone else entirely. And somewhere beneath that hurt, Emma could see him wondering what else about their time together had been a lie. The silence that followed Emma's admission felt endless. Marcus stood frozen in the doorway, processing the revelation that the woman he had opened his home and heart to was actually one of the wealthiest people in the city. Emma's father watched the interaction with keen interest, clearly trying to understand the relationship between his daughter and this working-class man. "I think we should take this conversation somewhere more private," Richard Richardson said diplomatically, gesturing toward the growing crowd of curious neighbors. "Perhaps we could go upstairs?" Marcus nodded mechanically and led them up to his apartment, his movement stiff and formal in a way that broke Emma's heart. This was not the warm, relaxed man who had laughed with his son over ice cream just the night before. This was a man who suddenly felt completely out of his depth and unsure of everything he thought he knew. The modest apartment felt even smaller, with Richard Richardson's imposing presence filling it. Emma watched her father take in the second-hand furniture, the family photos, and the simple but clean surroundings. To his credit, there was no judgment in his expression, only curiosity and perhaps a growing understanding of why his daughter had chosen to stay here. Tommy came running out of his bedroom, excited to see his father home early, but stopped short when he saw the strangers in their living room. His eyes went immediately to Emma, sensing the tension, even though he didn't understand it. "Emma, what's wrong?" Tommy asked, moving to stand beside her with the protective instinct of a child who had already lost one important woman in his life. "Are you sick?" Emma knelt down to Tommy's level, fighting back tears. "I'm not sick, sweetheart. but I have to tell you and your dad something important about who I really am." Over the next hour, Emma explained as gently as she could that she wasn't just Emma, a young woman who had argued with her family. She was Emma Richardson, and her family owned many big companies, including some that built buildings like the ones Tommy's father worked on. She tried to make it sound like an adventure story, but Tommy was smart enough to understand that something serious was happening. "So you're really rich?" Tommy asked, his 7-year-old mind cutting straight to the most obvious question. "Like, really, really rich?" "Yes," Emma said simply. "My family has a lot of money." Tommy considered this information seriously. "But you still made me pancakes and helped with my homework. And you still like our apartment, right?" His innocent questions highlighted exactly what Emma had been afraid of losing. "I love making you pancakes," Emma said, her voice thick with emotion. "And I love your apartment because it's full of love and kindness. That hasn't changed." But when Emma looked at Marcus, she could see that for him, everything had changed. He sat in his favorite chair, the one Emma had learned to avoid because the spring was broken, and stared at his hands. When he finally looked up at her, his expression was carefully neutral. "The job at Henderson Construction," Marcus said quietly. "Did that just happen to come along, or did you arrange it somehow?" Emma felt her cheeks burn with shame. She had hoped he wouldn't make that connection, but Marcus was too intelligent and had learned too much about her real identity to miss the obvious implications. "I didn't get you a job you weren't qualified for," Emma said desperately. "I just made sure the right people saw your application. You got the position because you're good at what you do, because you're honest and hardworking, and—" "You manipulated the situation," Marcus interrupted, his voice flat. "You used your family's influence to interfere in my life without telling me." He looked at Emma with an expression she had never seen before, and it terrified her. "What else have you arranged? What other parts of my life have you decided to manage?" "Nothing else," Emma said quickly. "Marcus, I only did it because I could see how hard you were working and how much you deserved a better opportunity. I wanted to help." "Help?" Marcus repeated, and there was bitterness in his voice. "Is that what this has all been? Rich girl, helping the poor construction worker?" He gestured around the small apartment. "Has this all been some kind of charity project for you?" "No," Emma said, tears starting to flow. "Marcus, that's not what this is at all. I care about you and Tommy more than anything. This family has become everything to me." Richard Richardson, who had been watching this exchange with growing interest, finally spoke up. "Emma, perhaps you should come home with me now. You've obviously been going through a difficult time, and this situation has become complicated for everyone involved." "I don't want to go home," Emma said, looking desperately between her father and Marcus. "Dad, these past few weeks have been the happiest of my life. I've learned what it means to be useful, to be part of a real family. I don't want to go back to board meetings and corporate politics." "And what about what I want?" Marcus asked quietly, standing up from his chair. "What about what's best for Tommy? Do I get a say in any of this, or are you going to use your family's power to arrange that too?" The question hit Emma like a physical blow. In her eagerness to help and her desperation to stay, she had never truly considered whether her presence was fair to Marcus and Tommy. She had made decisions about their lives without their knowledge or consent, and now Marcus was questioning everything about their relationship. "I never meant to hurt you," Emma whispered. "I just wanted to be someone different, someone who could earn love instead of having everything handed to her." Marcus's expression softened slightly at her words, but the hurt was still there. "Emma, I don't know what's real anymore. Did you care about us, or were we just a way for you to rebel against your father? And how can I trust anything you've told me when you've been lying about who you are from the very beginning?" Tommy, who had been listening to this conversation with growing distress, suddenly spoke up. "Dad, Emma taught me how to make paper airplanes, and she always remembers how I like my sandwiches cut. She cried when I showed her the picture I drew of Mom. That stuff is real, isn't it, Emma?" Emma looked at Tommy's earnest face and felt her heart break all over again. "Yes, sweetheart, all of that is real. My feelings for you and your dad are the most real thing in my life. But Marcus was shaking his head. It doesn't matter how real your feelings are if they're built on lies. Tommy and I can't be part of some rich girl's experiment in living differently. We're real people with real lives, not characters in your story. Richard Richardson watched his daughter's face crumple and made a decision. Marcus, may I speak with you privately for a moment? He asked. When Marcus nodded, Richard turned to Emma and Tommy. Why don't you two go pack Emma's things? It seems like there are some adult conversations that need to happen. As Emma reluctantly took Tommy to help her gather her few belongings, she could hear the low murmur of her father's and Marcus's voices from the living room. She had no idea what her father was saying, but she knew that whatever happened next would determine whether she had lost the best thing that had ever happened to her forever. While Emma and Tommy packed her belongings in the bedroom, Richard Richardson studied Marcus carefully. He had built his empire by reading people, and what he saw in this man impressed him more than he had expected. Marcus wasn't intimidated by wealth or status, but he was genuinely hurt by his daughter's deception. You love her, Richard said quietly. It wasn't a question. Marcus looked up, startled by the direct statement. I thought I did, but I don't know if I was falling in love with Emma or with someone who doesn't really exist. My daughter has never had to work for anything in her life, Richard said, settling into the chair across from Marcus. Everything has always been given to her before she even knew she wanted it. But watching her just now, seeing how she looks, at you and your son, I think she's found something here that all my money couldn't buy her. Marcus shook his head. She lied to me from the first moment we met. How am I supposed to trust her? How do I know this isn't just some wealthy person's idea of playing house with the poor people? Because I know my daughter, Richard replied, and I've never seen her fight for anything the way she's fighting to stay here with you. Emma has walked away from a fortune, from a life of comfort and security, to sleep on your couch and wash dishes in your kitchen. That's not rebellion, Marcus, that's love. In the bedroom, Emma was folding her few pieces of clothing while Tommy sat on the bed, his face serious beyond his 7 years. Are you really leaving? He asked quietly. I don't want to, Emma said honestly. But your dad is hurt because I wasn't honest about who I am. He needs time to think about whether he can trust me again. But you're still the same, Emma, Tommy insisted with the simple logic of a child. You still helped me with homework and made funny voices when you read me stories. Rich people can do those things too, right? Emma sat beside Tommy on the bed and pulled him into a hug. You're absolutely right, sweetie. But sometimes adults make things more complicated than they need to be. Your dad loves you so much that he wants to protect you from getting hurt, and right now he's not sure if having me around is safe for your heart. My heart feels safe with you, Tommy said into her shoulder. It feels like when Mom used to hug me. Emma had to bite her lip to keep from crying. This little boy had accepted her completely from the first day, and the thought of leaving him felt like abandoning her own child. But she also understood Marcus's position. She had built their relationship on deception, and now he had every right to question her motives. Back in the living room, Richard was sharing something with Marcus that surprised them both. I've been thinking about retiring, he said. Oh, not completely, but stepping back from the day-to-day operations. Emma was supposed to take over, but this experience has shown me that she's not ready for that responsibility yet. What does that have to do with us? Marcus asked. I think Emma needs to learn what you've already mastered, Richard continued. How to build something meaningful from the ground up. How to work for what you want instead of having it handed to you. How to value relationships over transactions. He paused, studying Marcus's face. I think you could teach her those things, if you were willing. Marcus stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the neighborhood where he had raised his son, where he had built a simple but honest life. Mr. Richardson, I make maybe in a year what your daughter probably spends on clothes. I live paycheck to paycheck in a 2-bedroom apartment. What could I possibly offer someone like Emma? You've already given her something she's never had, Richard replied. You've shown her what it means to be valued for who she is, not what she can provide. You've given her the chance to contribute to something real and meaningful. And whether you realize it or not, you've made her happier in these few weeks than I've seen her in years. When Emma and Tommy emerged from the bedroom with her packed bag, the conversation between the two men stopped. Emma looked at Marcus hopefully, searching his face for any sign of forgiveness or understanding, but his expression remained carefully guarded. "I think it's best if you come home with me now," Richard said gently to his daughter. "But Emma, I want you to know that I'm proud of the person you've become during your time here. You've learned things that no business school could teach you." "Dad, I don't want to go back to the way things were," Emma said firmly. "I don't want to spend my life in boardrooms making decisions that only benefit people who are already wealthy. I want to do something that matters." "Then we'll find a way to make that happen," Richard promised. "But right now, Marcus and Tommy need time to process all of this, and you need time to figure out who you really want to be." As they prepared to leave, Tommy suddenly ran to Emma and threw his arms around her waist. "Promise you'll come back," he said, his voice muffled against her coat. "Promise you won't forget about us." Emma knelt down and held Tommy tight, memorizing the feel of his small arms around her neck. "I could never forget about you, sweetheart. You and your dad have taught me what love really means. That's not something a person can forget." She looked up at Marcus, who was watching this goodbye with pain in his eyes. "Marcus, I know I hurt you by not being honest, and I know you need time to think. But please know that everything I felt, everything we shared, that was all real. I've never been more myself than I was here with you and Tommy." Marcus nodded stiffly, but Emma could see the conflict in his expression. Part of him wanted to forgive her, to ask her to stay, but his protective instincts and wounded pride were stronger. As Emma and her father walked toward the expensive cars waiting outside, Emma turned back one last time. Marcus was standing in the window with Tommy, both of them watching her leave. The image burned itself into her memory, and she made herself a promise that somehow, some way, she would find a path back to them. 3 months later, Emma was working at a community center in the same neighborhood, having convinced her father to let her start a program providing job training and placement services for working families. It wasn't glamorous work, and it paid almost nothing, but it was meaningful in ways her inherited wealth had never been. Every day she hoped to see Marcus or Tommy walk through the doors, and every day she worked to become the kind of person who deserved a second chance at the love she had found and lost. Because sometimes the most valuable things in life are the ones you have to earn twice.